and it takes anywhere from sometimes 10 seconds to 30 seconds. There we go. Facebook is good. All right, we'll just roll with that. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Build with the CEO. Today is a little bit different. Yes, it is Tuesday, it's noon, so we're talking about all things Coach Catalyst and business, but today we're going to do something a little bit different. And this is probably a series that we'll get into maybe once a month, just so that it gives us an opportunity to be able to talk about things. So for those of you that don't know, I have Kane, who is the other co-founder of Coach Catalyst, on today, and Kane is like spearheading product, and so he's the closest one to the product, building the platform, building new features, and so we want to get on like once a month or so, and just like talk about, hey, because we typically release stuff almost weekly, sometimes faster than that, depending on what's going on. And so new things are coming out all the time. And I've gotten lots of questions from people like, hey, I didn't even know that existed. I just saw something in our Facebook group recently, like fiber. Like we have fiber as, I don't want to call it macro, but like inside of macros, protein, carbs, fats. And then we have fiber. Like they didn't know that fiber was being pulled in from places like macros first. So we just want another place where we can kind of highlight some of this stuff, talk through some of the thought processes behind it, because we don't create anything without a ton of like debate and a ton of like, does this make sense? Is this the best way to do it? And so there may be an idea, but it doesn't actually come to fruition for multiple months because we want to try and get it as right as we can, and then iterate on it a little bit. And so Ken, let's go back a little bit, because there are a couple of kind of features that we dropped the end of last year that I think are worth talking through. And so the first one I want you to talk through is the notification center, and like what was some of the thought process behind that, in bringing that to the platform.
Yeah, so Notification Center, we brought that, I think it was quarter three, quarter four last year. I can't remember the exact date, but second half of last year. The big thought process behind Notification Center is, as coaches, we don't want to dig, right?
Right.
We have all this information coming in. We have client workouts, we have client actions, we have their food logs, their pictures. We have tons of stuff coming in from all over the place. But one of the biggest issues is you have to dig through to find it sometimes. And I think that's one of the problems with a lot of other softwares is, yeah, they collect a ton of information, it's all there, but like you have to click into each client, go to their thing, look at it, go back, go to the next client, go to the next thing. And so we wanted a very, very simple, easy way for a coach to see it like an overview of like what's happening. And that was kind of the start of Notification Center. But actually, as we got into it, we realized, hey, this is great, right? This is important. This is awesome, but it's missing because I actually don't care all the time what happened. I care what didn't happen as a coach. And I think that's almost even more important is, yeah, I programmed a workout for a client and they did it. That's great. I want to know that. But if I program a workout for Trevor tomorrow and he doesn't do it, or I program habits for Trevor and he doesn't do it, or a form and doesn't fill it out, that's what I want to be notified about. And so I think diving deeper on that and realizing what actually helps a coach in their daily basis. And obviously it helps because you and I and Ashley and we're all coaching on the software right now. We're
Right.
using the software in a daily basis with clients. And so we realized this is a pain point. This is a frustration. And so that's why we went deep into not only just notifications, but the follow-ups too.
Right.
How can I get notified of things that didn't happen?
Well, that was a lot of the argument, right? It's like, hey, we could create a notification center and just like
Yep.
basically like list out everything that's happening in the platform, but does that actually save a coach more time, or does that just add more noise?
It was funny. I was talking to a different coach about this, and they had pulled up one of their other. They'd used a competitor in the past, and they pulled up their account, and they have a notification center, and there was a bubble that said 1,028. I was like, "What is that?" They're like, "Oh, those are my unread notifications." It's like, "Cool. Do you ever look at them?"
Right.
No. It's just too much, right? It's just overwhelming, and so we knew we had to do it differently. We had to rethink it because we could have easily just thrown something up and said, "Hey, here's notifications," just like
Right.
everybody else. But that's not what we do as a software.
Right. And I want to kind of highlight a couple of things that go into a little bit of the nuance in creating something. So one is being able to filter by the type of notification, right?
Hmm.
Because like actions may not be as important to me as forms. Right? I
Yep.
see like forms a lot of times being like, hey, I put a form on a client's account. I need that information in order to help that client. But I don't want to have to dig through every single client's account to see if they filled out their form, right? I should be able to just go to my notification center, go to follow up, sort by forms, and now, oh, cool, I can see everyone that's done it. So that's, I think, a really unique piece to it. The other one is the ability to like archive things.
Hmm.
So a lot of coaches will use the notification center as a little bit of their to do. Hey, if someone did stuff, I want to follow up with those clients and give them some feedback. But then I want to just archive that. So, like, all right, those are out of the way now, and I can look at the next clients, and that will kind of populate day by day. So they can use it a little bit as that, hey, what are my coaching tasks for the day? Who do I need to follow up with? Who are the people that have done workouts, that completed workouts? Because there's a cool thing in there that if a client completes a workout, I can just click on that name of the workout inside of the notification center. That opens a new tab with the workout, completed workout right there. I can see everything. I can see comments, all of that. And so, like, a notification center isn't just a notification center. It's all these kind of little pieces that go into it that help a coach save more time. Because that's like one of our guiding principles that we come back to is like, will this thing actually help a coach get the information they need or do the job they need to do faster? And if it
Yes,
takes them more time, like, I don't know if we need it.
exactly. Yeah, that's every single thing we look at is through that lens. Can we save the coach more time?
Right.
And like you said, it's those little tiny details, right? Sure, notifications, but being able to jump right to it, being able to message a client right from that page,
Right.
again, super helpful. You don't have to go leave the page, come back, try to find where you were at. No, like it's just right there. And I think this concept of archiving and using it like Inbox Zero is the same
Mm-hmm.
thing, right? You can kind of say, hey, I saw this. I checked it out. We're good to go. Archive, get it out of there. It doesn't delete. It's still there. You can still bring it back if you ever want to. But it's just a way to make sure you're not missing things.
Right. Which I mean, kind of leads us into this next piece with workouts. And like, just for anyone listening, right? Like, we did not set out to be a workout builder from day one. That isn't the reason Coach Catalyst exists. It was actually this funny little phenomenon that we all had in 2020 called COVID that really accelerated that. We probably would have done it at some point in the future, but it wasn't on our near roadmap. Having that, and then coaches kind of, hey, I need this, or I'm using multiple platforms to do all of this. Like, can you guys build this? And again, when we built the workout builder, it was built in a very specific way. Like, we weren't trying to create a workout builder that collects every morsel of data and gives you every graph on everything that you would ever need, that like is kind of fun for us as coaches to look at, but doesn't always, very rarely drives any sort of coaching decision. Especially for the vast majority of our users who are working with general population. Like, we're not, our platform isn't for Olympic athletes and like people that are trying to get every morsel of performance out of something. So that stuff needs to be dialed in. Like, for the vast majority of my clients and people on the platform, it's like, did you do the workout or not?
Yep.
Like, if you did, great. Did you do something? Did you do a little more this time than you did last time? If we look at the history of an exercise, are we seeing that you're doing a little bit more, a little bit more? So there were specifics to that on how we built it. But one piece that was always missing was this idea of, if I have a client that wants to get feedback on how they're doing an exercise, right? How do I send that video? Or how do I, and before it was always through the messenger, like you can send
Yep.
videos through the messenger. But to us, that wasn't necessarily good enough because it's a little bit disjointed where that conversation is happening in a messenger, but it's actually about a specific exercise. So tell me a little bit about, so it's called comments on an
Hmm.
exercise, but talk me through some of the thought process behind that.
I mean, honestly, I think it was probably over a year that
Mm-hmm.
we went through that process because we had four different ideas of how to do it. We knew we wanted to do it, but we knew we had to do it in a good way. Because again, we'd seen other platforms do it and things get lost.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches wouldn't know that comments were there, they'd miss them, they were gone. Like it just didn't actually help them on their daily basis. And it just made them dig deeper into the software instead of, again, saving them time. Yeah, I think one of the tipping points, and again, we had used Message Center forever, right? Just send a message. It's fine. Send a message. One of the tipping points, I think, was myself as a client, even because I was working with a coach and I was sending videos. And I had 4 days of workouts I was doing, and so I was sending a ton of videos in, and then I'd realize I'd come back to day one and I'd go back to my squats, and I'd be like, oh, what was that cue they told me to do again? And I had to scroll up through my messages and try to find, okay, where were we a week ago? on this video, on this exercise. Oh, okay, there it is. Like it was just too much. It was kind of crazy trying to find. And so that's why we really pushed to do it this way. We thought long and hard about how to actually do comments. For the longest time, we were going to put it in the message center, right? We were going to use the message center for everything. It was almost like your notification center you go to. The problem was being able to tell if it was an exercise comment and then have the comments, the replies right there would be difficult. And again, you'd have the same issue of scrolling back and forth as a client trying to find the information. So we settled on putting it on the actual exercise. But again, it has to be connected to the exercise. So if I do a Bulgarian split squat today, and I did it 2 months ago in a completely different workout in a completely different program, that comment needs to stay on that exercise so I can still see it. And so there's a lot of complexity to it on the back end, a ton of complexity. And it took a long, long time to work out and testing and make sure it's all working correctly. But in the end, the information lives where the activity is taking place, right? Exercise comments live in workouts. That's where it's happening. But we needed the notification center before we did it so that coaches could know there was a comment. And that's kind of why it went in that order of notification center first, then exercise comments. Otherwise, we'd have been like everybody else where it just gets lost.
Right. And that's, I mean, because we're not necessarily the first person or the first platform into this game, we have the ability to kind of look at what's working with other platforms and like what makes a lot of sense. And we can kind of iterate on that process. And this is, I think, one of them is having that thing live there, because now it gives you these ability to, like, let's say you wanted to create a workout that is strictly assessment based, or maybe you're having them do overhead squats and you're having them do a back to wall test, and maybe you're having them do a few other exercises, right? You can create a specific exercise that is that assessment. And now the client can upload the video into the comments. And every time they upload the video, because maybe we assign that assessment workout every 4 weeks or 12 weeks, and then they put the new one in, and now those videos are right next to each other. And I can play one, I can play the other one, I can leave comments back to it. And it all just lives with that exercise. So if that exercise travels to a new workout or travels somewhere else, that all stays there, which I think is the really valuable piece in it. It just all lives in one place.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because in order to get to that, which we knew that's where we needed to go, that was the end point, we needed to have unique exercises, right? We need to go down that path first. We need to have uniqueness within workouts and blocks that we had to do at the beginning of last year. Then we had to have the notification center. Then we actually had the infrastructure to do what we wanted to do. And so whenever we're looking at these features and what to build, it's not ever as clear as, oh yeah, just build it, right? There's a lot of moving pieces.
Let me jump in there and explain like one we're talking about right now, right? Like we've had a lot of discussions right now about this idea of swapping an exercise.
Yes.
Right. And so if I want to swap out an exercise, what does that look like? Does the coach get to choose the exercises? Like you can only pick between these two. Can the client grab any exercise from the database? Should it be a specific category or exercises that only have this tag? And like there's all of these different like paths you could go down. And so something as simple as like, oh, I just want my clients to be able to swap out an exercise. There's usually like, well, what if this, and then not making it so complicated where then it just becomes a terrible user experience, because if they have to then go in and search by tags and find this and find, like, it's just like your client just, and so I mean that's something that we're been talking through and debating and speaking with coaches on. And so there's a information gathering process, because like we have thousands of coaches using the platform, and unfortunately not everyone coaches the exact same way, right? Some people are in person where they're running at gyms, other people are online only, some people are hybrid, some people coach CrossFit style, other people are coaching this methodology, that methodology. And so when we think about something, it's like, all right, what makes sense for the masses in a way versus like these three people that coach in this very specific way, which is unfortunately a trade-off of, if we charge $10,000 a person, we could develop it just strictly for you, but that's just not the case.
And it's also, what can we build, even if it's those three people, like if they want a specific thing, does that negatively impact other people?
Right.
Because like exercise swapping, I've talked to I can't remember how many coaches now over the last probably 3 weeks about it. And everybody's like, oh yeah, I just want my clients to swap, right? Well, yeah, that's easy. Like, yes, we can do that tomorrow. But what do they swap to?
Right.
One coach wanted progressions and regressions. And it's like, okay, so who are you going to pick the progressions and regressions? Yeah. Is that by the exercise? Is that tied to the program? Is that tied to the client? Like, who are you picking this for, and where is that going to be picked? Somebody else said, well, I just want my clients to be able to, they might not have the right equipment, so I want them to be able to pick a similar exercise. Okay, cool. Like, are you going to go into your account with all of your exercise and pick what's similar to that? Or like, how are those options populated? Or do you want them to see everything in your account? And so it's almost, I understand coaches want this, and I do too. I think it's a great idea, but it would honestly give, it would, it would take more time to go in and pick all that stuff unless you just want every option there. And so that's what we're trying to go through right now, is trying to figure out what's the way that we can get it to be 80% of all
Mm-hmm.
coaches what they want. How can we appease them and make sure they get what they want, but also make it not take a ton of time?
Right. And because like the easy solution is just like, oh, swap an exercise, pick every exercise in your database. But then it's like now I'm asking the client to know what I call my exercises
Yeah.
and pick the right one. And like, what if they can't? What if they think it's a Bulgarian split squat, but I call it a rear foot elevated split squat? And then I type in split squat and 50 things come up, right? Like that's not a great client experience. And so that's the easy button. But like, we want to get it right, like you said, for 80% of the users. Can we get it right for most people?
Yep.
And then we feel really good about it. So let's kind of talk about. We made some big releases kind of since the new year in
Yeah.
January. So just kind of list out some of those that we've done that are worth talking about.
I mean, one of the big ones that I don't want to say you're not going to see it, because you will see it and experience it, but it's performance based,
Mm-hmm.
right? We actually went in and we overhauled every single page, every single button, every single call in the software that happens. We overhauled it with, you know, crazy amount of work on the back end, but it made it tremendously faster. I mean, you can zip around the software. It doesn't reload every time. It doesn't reload the sidebar. Things just fly now. So again, saving you time. What used to take, I was doing an experiment one time, and I think it was 300% faster to be able to do like 10 things in a row. It just tripled. Like, it was just so much quicker. And again, speed's a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're using a software and you have to do something, you sit there and wait for a while and then click another button and wait for a while, it just aggravates you. And so we're always looking at how can we speed things up? How can we make performance faster? Because we're going to be able to pull more things in then too. If the software is faster, it processes data faster. We can process more things, and we can do things like comparing compliance to macros to workouts a lot easier, and do some of these deeper level thinking that we want to do in the future.
And a lot of it's just like setting the stage for other things,
Yep.
right? And unfortunately, like this took like
A
longer
long
than
time.
any of us wanted it to take, right? Like, and so, but it was a necessary, and it probably like someone, unless you're playing with the software, like you'll notice, hey, it looks a little bit snappier, but you don't necessarily realize the amount of time and effort that goes into that aspect, right? And so it is significantly faster. I know just me playing in it, like going
Yeah.
through stuff, like, and again, it comes back to our tenet of like, hey, is this going to help a coach do their job faster? Yes. Okay. We're going to go through the headache of going through every single page that is inside of Coach Catalyst and basically unifying it all and having to update all of it. And so, like, things will break down a little bit and then we need to fix them. And so there was a 2 or 3 day period after we launched it where we had to fix a bunch of stuff. But that's just kind of to be expected when you're making that big of an overhaul. Um,
Yeah,
sorry, go
we
ahead.
had a checklist of things that we tested this for 3+ weeks. I
Mm-hmm.
think it might have been more than that, and we had a checklist of over 350 items by the end of it to test. It started out as like 70, and it just kept growing and growing and growing because we found more things, and we still missed a few things. Right? It was, but the tricky part was it touched every single page, every single click, every single screen in the entire software. So it was, I don't want to say it was impossible to not miss anything, because we always have a zero tolerance for bugs, right? We don't want any bugs to show up ever. It's never okay if something breaks. Does it still happen? Yes, it still happens. but we always try to make sure we put things in place to make sure it doesn't happen in the future again. And so this one was such an overhaul that it was just so tough to get everything, but it set us up in the future. Now we have a checklist of what to go through next time we ever have something like this happens again. We know exactly what to test.
And that kind of, I mean, that there's a piece of that went out with this too that it's worth talking about is this audio messaging.
Yeah.
And so we've talked to a lot of coaches, and a big piece of how we think about Coach Catalyst, right, is it's like this bridge between you and the client. And when you move into the online world or the virtual world, you miss this concept of connection that happens organically in the offline world. If I'm a personal trainer and I'm training someone 2 days a week for the year, that's about 100 hours of contact, give or take, with that person face to face. And if you can't build a relationship with someone with 100 hours of contact over the course of a year, like, we need to probably look at our job choice. But when we move into the online world, it's still essentially personal training, but we've lost this idea of connection. And so one of the things we're seeing with a lot of coaches is the retention sucks. And it's a lot of times because they haven't built strong enough connection with their clients. And so one of the ways to do that is to talk to someone, right? Them hearing your voice gets them more connected to you. It just feels more human versus a message that's typed out. So we've had this on the app for a long time, right? On the app, you could record audio messages. We made some improvements there because Android is an absolute pain in the ass to try and work with. And so we've made some improvements there to get better reliability and help make sure that clients have a great experience every time. But on the web, it was always something that was missing.
Yeah, I mean, basically the only way you could shoot an audio message on the web, and what we tell coaches is two versions, right? Number one, if you're reading the message on the web, just pull up your phone and send the audio message. Not a great answer, but it worked. The other option is, yeah, you can record something on your computer and send it as an MP3 file. Again, not a great workaround. It worked, but not awesome. Now you can do it directly on the web, right? So just click the little microphone button on the web, start recording your message. It comes across the same as if you were recording on the app. And there's two big things there now. Number one, playback speed, right? So we got a lot of requests for people wanting to change the playback speed. Maybe somebody talks really slow. Maybe you just are a fast listener and you want to process a ton of messages at once. Whether you're on the app or the web, you can do 1x, 1.5, or 2x speed now. So just be able to process things faster. The other is we actually limited the length. And this was something we went back and forth on a lot. But what we were seeing with the data was certain people were sending really long audio messages. We're talking 5+ minutes, if not longer than that. And the file sizes could get so large that they could get lost and couldn't process. And then, of course, you get upset because, like, hey, I lost this huge message I just sent. And so instead of trying to go down this route of trying to battle this and figure it out and how do we prevent this, and okay, we can alert them that it's going to be too long or too big, but does that really help? What we did is we actually limited it to a minute. So you get a minute to talk, and it has a countdown right there, so you know exactly where you're at. And you can play it back at the end to make sure. But then as soon as that minute's up, you can send another one if you need to expand more. And so it just helps reliability. It just helps people be clear and make sure there's not this loss, which I think is the biggest thing. How can we avoid a major issue? Slight inconvenience to send 2 messages? Maybe, not that big of a deal, but you're not going to lose a message that you just sent.
And that was a mistake we made early, right? We made a mistake that we could allow people to go as long as they wanted to, not thinking that people would send really long messages, and not necessarily knowing that Android has some issues based upon the phone that you have, how much storage you have on your phone, and things that are outside of our control. And so that was a mistake that we made early. We listened to a lot of coaches. Hey, we're having these issues. I record a message and it doesn't go through. Okay, we need to find a way to fix that so that, like, the reliability, like you said, is there every single time, and it should work as you expect it to work. And so that was, a lot of the thinking behind that minute is just like, hey, yes, it is a little bit harder to send a couple, but at least they're going to go through, and it doesn't matter the device that we're on. We don't have to troubleshoot Android and all that fun stuff. And so, and it's when we look at different social platforms, it kind of falls in line with what we might expect with things like WhatsApp or Messenger or Instagram or some of those other ones. And so there's a little bit of familiarity if a client maybe is using one of those other platforms as well.
And as well, The biggest thing there is expectations, right?
Hmm.
When I start a message and I don't know it's a minute limit, that's an issue.
Right.
But a lot of those social platforms, I know Instagram's one with audio messages, as you start doing it, it has a little like spinner, right? It has a
Hmm.
little countdown, and once it gets to the top, it's done. I think that sends automatically, which like that's tricky. At least when when ours has a
Right.
countdown, when it hits it, it at least stops it and shows you,
Right.
okay, do you want to play this back? Do you want to delete it? Do you want to send it? Like you have the option. And so I think that's the biggest thing is expectations. When I start this message, I have a countdown right away, so I know exactly how much time I have left, and I'm not surprised when it ends.
And like ultimately at Coach Catalyst, yes, we're building for coaches. Coaches pay us, right? But
Hmm.
we're building for your clients.
Yeah.
And so that experience is really, really important to us and making sure that you look good as a coach and we're not having issues at the client level because a client's not going to come to us at Coach Catalyst. They're going to come to you as a coach,
Yep.
right? And so we're trying to do everything in our power to make that experience for the client as easy as possible. And even our support team is one as far as if a client's having an issue with the app, they get permission from the coach and they reach directly out to that client and help that client fix it without the coach having to play the middle person. And so our goal is to help your clients have a great experience because if they have a great experience, you're probably going to have a good experience and you're going to hang around at Coach Catalyst for a long time. So let's kind of talk about some of the upcoming things because there's a number of things on the roadmap, but we can talk about like the near term things that maybe someone would expect to see in the next month or two.
Yeah. So near term, the first one coming out are threaded replies and messages. So you can actually reply directly to a message in the message thread and be able to almost start like a little bit of a thread. It's only going to be one. It's very similar to iMessage. If you've used an iPhone or iOS device, you're going to be able to reply directly to one of the past messages. It's going to show kind of what you're replying to and kind of connect those together. And so it's not just going to be an ongoing thread where things can get lost, but it's a great way if a client sends a message in the past and you want to respond to it, or if they just send three messages on three different topics,
Mhm.
you can send responses to each one individually and they'll know what it's relating to very, very easily. So that's coming on the web and the app. um, Never like to have hard timelines. You
Right.
never know with development. I would say within the next couple weeks that will be out. Integration with Whoop is another big one that should be out within the next couple weeks. We're hoping. We're still doing some testing on that. We're still going through some of the variables to make sure we're getting the right data, we're getting the right, we're placing the right spots and everything. But that's been a big one that we had for a while. Whoop became um, let's just
Very protective of their
yeah,
data.
we'll try to take the PC route here, but they kicked everybody off and now we're back. So we're excited about that. Communities. Communities are getting a major overhaul. Both UI, just the look of them, how they interact, the smoothness of clicking in the comments and seeing that on the web, um, as well as on the app too. So like that's getting a kind of a facelift and a minor overhaul on the back end. And then we also have some like stuff with resources.
Well, go back to communities once.
Yeah.
Search function with communities.
Search function with communities.
That was kind of another thing that people talked about a lot is being able to search for stuff. So, as a coach, right, you could put hashtags on something. It won't
Yep.
necessarily pull up like hashtags, but like hashtag recipe, right? Then you could just search for recipe, and now I've got all of the posts with recipe in it.
Yep. So we won't do actual topics yet. It's something we're
Right.
considering, but this will be, you can basically use it like that.
Hmm.
The search functionality will give you that ability and just more reliability between mentions and reactions and jumping directly to where somebody comments and where somebody tags you.
Hmm.
Um, that's just trying to make it just a smoother experience.
Right. And then resources. You say there was something with
Yeah, we're
resources.
doing a little overhaul with resources, just the look and feel of resources. Not a ton new functionality, but we will be able to do cover photos on there. So you'll be able to make things look a little nicer, both
Hmm.
on the app and on the web. It's just going to give it a little better feel to it. Still doing links, still doing files, still doing hosted videos. All of those are just going to have previews again, the app too. So we're trying to get away from just this box with an icon
Hmm.
that a lot of things have and trying to give it more visual. With that, one of the reasons we haven't done this in the past is um, coaches are notorious for not picking good designs. Let's just say we mock something up, our designer puts it together, it looks amazing, that we give it to a coach. Um, they put like a bad logo or a bad image on there and it doesn't look so hot anymore. And so we know coaches aren't designers. That's not what they're supposed to be doing. So we have an integration with Unsplash coming with part of that, which means you can pick from great free photos. So you don't have to try to, create something on your own. You
Mhm.
can just pick something already that's generated and apply it right to your folder.
Well, this, I mean, comes back to this idea of like providing a really good product to your client, right? So if your client goes to resources and it looks nice,
Yep.
right? Whether or not the content in there is good or not, like the client is going to have an initial good first impression and it's just going to have a different feel to it versus a list, which is kind of what it looks like right now. There's a list and there's some like icons that we have, but it's just going to give it a little bit more design,
Yep.
which again increases that perceived value of it. And now with some of the other things that we've launched, like free products, right? Like if you go into payments, you can now build free things. You can build out an 8-week workout program that a client can then go into resources and put themselves on. And you can create kind of these different kind of on demand, do it yourself type ways for clients to be able to maybe get more value out of your coaching practice, which is then opening up the ability of coaches to offer different things. Like you could offer a downsell after someone finishes your true coaching program, where they stay inside of your organization, and now they may have access to all of this on demand stuff, and they can kind of put themselves on different things. So they continue to be a paying client, but they may not requiring the same amount of time and effort that they did when they were in maybe your core offering or your signature program. And so it's just another way for coaches to be able to kind of diversify some of their offerings, provide a better product for their clients, um, and just make it easy at the end of the day.
Yeah. And that's the goal, right? And making it easy. There's one other one we're working on right now, editing global elements within a program. And it's kind of funny. We knew this was an issue because we screwed it up ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And like if we screw up something in the software or forget about something, like how are we going to expect our users to not do something like that? And so right now, if you're in a client journey, if you're in a program and you click a global element, it opens up in the edit phase right away, right? You're automatically in there and you can edit it. And a lot of times coaches go in and start editing it away and they click save and it says this will disconnect. And they go, oh shoot, I wanted to edit as a global, not as an individual. I get kind of flustered and don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're changing the flow. It's actually an extra click, right? This is actually some time where we want to add friction. And there's certain areas where we want to add friction in the flow, and certain times we want to take a friction away. And we actually want to add an extra click where you just say, hey, I want to edit this. So basically, it's going to show up as preview mode first. I want to edit it, and I want to edit globally or local, like individually, and then you can go in and edit the thing. And so it's really almost protecting coaches from themselves of making a mistake that's going to be an issue down the road. So this way they can just easily say, hey, here's how I want to edit it. I know how I want to edit it already. I'm going to tell you how I want to do it, and then I can go in and edit it. So again, small sounds like a small thing, but it's going to help keep things consistent across the board.
Well, I mean, there are some complexities in how we think about things, right? To
Yes.
allow for coaches to be able to coach in the way that they want to coach. Because I may be a coach where I have 20 people on the same program, they're all doing the exact same workout. I find a mistake in the workout. I don't want to have to edit that on 20 different clients' programs. I want to edit it in one, in my global, and I want to push it down to everybody to save that time. But then I may also have another coach that everything is individualized, but they want
Yep.
to work off of templates. They're not starting from scratch. They want to start with a template, put it onto a client's account, make those adjustments to that client, but then not have that impact the template or the global element, right? And so we need these complexities in order to provide a coach with what the, really to allow a coach to coach in the way that they need to coach, but then make it simple that they understand those complexities, right? And
Yes.
we have headers and some other stuff where like it's there, but it's not as clear as it should be. And so
Yep.
that's where kind of going back through this and be like, we've had enough people screw this up that like we need to make it better.
And I think that's the big theme of this year, right? We're going back through and we're revamping and redoing a lot of our existing things to, number one, make them easier, improve functionality with them. And the big one is connect them to other options too, right? And so a lot of our stuff at the beginning was very siloed. Programs lived here, resources lived here, messages were here. And now our goal is to somehow connect them as best as possible. So, like if I have a resource, I want to be able to put that in a lesson. And so somebody can just click that and jump right in. If I have somebody who was added on a certain program, I want to be able to grant them access to a resource folder and add them to a community automatically. Like all this stuff that's going to connect things together and make it more cohesive. That's kind of the big initiative for this year. And you're muted.
Oh, there you go. From a true coaches, I'm trying to I've pressed the mute bar to or the space bar to let myself talk so I don't have all the background noise. But it all comes down to and now I forgot what I was going to say. Well, the other thing I did want to say, because we didn't mention it, forms are getting a little bit of an upgrade.
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. Forms get sections and titles, so you can put different sections within forms. You're going to make it easier to be able to add when you're building a form or editing a form. You can add questions in the middle a lot easier, so you don't always have to put it at the bottom, drag it up to the right spot. You're going to be able to add it in kind of wherever you want in there, um, and then just give you ability to add more description to it. Right. So maybe there's a section about your ratings for your week, and maybe there's a section about your metric collection. You can kind of create these different sections within the form and let the client know what it's about.
So that gave me enough time to actually remember what I wanted to say. So inside of the platform, you pretty much have every tool that you need to coach a client.
Yes.
Like you've got lessons for education, you've got actions for accountability, you've got forms to collect data, you've got workouts to be able to deliver that aspect. You've got messaging to control some of the communication. You've got this ability to create journeys to be able to create programs. And so you have all these pieces, right? Yes, there's always going to be had like this little thing or that little thing, but if we think about from like a core coaching standpoint, and I don't care if you're a health coach, a nutrition coach, a fitness coach, like you have the pieces you need in order to be successful. Now it's just making, like you said, connecting those pieces together and making it a cohesive unit. So if I do add someone to a program and they don't maybe need to go add them over here to these things as well, we can just make things easier. Because our goal at the end of the day with Coach Catalyst, it is a coaching software, in that the software is meant to make your life easier. If
Yes.
you are using software and it is like more frustrating, it's harder, it takes longer to do things, that is not probably a good platform for you. And we need to find a way to make that better. So like Coach Catalyst, yes, there's going to be learning curves. Yes, at the beginning, whenever there's something is new, like you have to learn it. But this is about after you've learned the thing. Like it should be making your life easier. And we every single day we get feedback from coaches that life is way easier using Coach Catalyst than it is using spreadsheets and WhatsApp and Messenger and email and all of these things and trying to piece these together. That's the cool thing about software, is we can start to put these together. And so much of this next year, like you said, is this: how do we take that now to the next level and connect these pieces even more? Because over the last 2 years, we've been kind of adding these pieces in, adding these pieces in. And now it's like, all right, how do we make sure that all of these pieces are working together as quickly and as efficiently as possible to provide the coach ultimately with more time, right? So
Yep.
they have more time to spend time with clients and do the thing that only the coach can do, which is build connection with that client.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And it's always a tricky balance, right? Because everybody wants more things. They want more abilities. They want more features. And what they really want is their problem solved,
Right.
right? And so that's how we actually look at it. We don't look at it as how can we add more. We say how can we solve more problems? And that's not always adding more things to the software. It's making it work better. It's making it work easier. Because at the end of the day, and we've talked about this a couple times, we service coaches, but also your end clients too. And so we have to make things as powerful as possible, but as simple to use. And so that's always the balance of, sure, we could add all of this crazy stuff to it. It's going to take you more time. It's going to be confusing. It's going to be too complex for most coaches to use. We could make it super dead simple, and then it's not going to have enough that you think it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always that balance of how can we build as much power into this and be able to do as much as possible, keeping it as simple to use for both coaches and clients.
Right.
Because they're
Because at
not, I
the
mean, coaches aren't software people. They don't want to use software. They want to coach clients. They want to get clients results.
and for your
Software
client,
helps it.
right? Like for your client, if we have a really complicated process for your client in order to give you information, because that's what the
Yep.
software is doing. It's giving you information as a coach so you can help that client more efficiently. But if we can't get that information, then like it could be the prettiest thing, it could be the best thing in the world, but if we can't get the client to actually do it, and that's one of the reasons like actions were done or not done. It's
Exactly.
simple. Did you do it or did you do it? We don't need all this complicated stuff. Like, and so I think that's some things we tend to forget about, especially as coaches, because we have all these things and we want to make it complicated because that sometimes makes us feel like maybe it's like a little internal. It makes us feel our
Yeah.
worth, right? If we have it, it's like most professionals do that. And so it's like, how do we simplify this, get the information we need so you can do the ultimate work, which is having that information and then helping that client move forward or move closer to their goals.
More
And the
data
software
isn't
just
always
makes it.
better.
Exactly. Right. 100%. So no, this is fun. We're going to try and do this like every
Yeah.
month or so because I think it allows when we just do a press release or we put stuff out there, we're kind of telling you the what, right? Hey, what did we just launch? Here's how you do it, that kind of stuff. But I think it's valuable to understand like what are we thinking behind all of this because there is a lot of thought, there is a lot of nuance, there's a lot of conversations that go into bringing something out there. And so hopefully you guys understand a little bit better on like where we're coming from and what we're thinking about because it's hard. Like you have to ultimately at the end of the day make decisions where some people may not get exactly what they want, but it helps continue to push this thing forward. And then a piece of our goal is to show you how to use this effectively. And I think some of these conversations can help you think about these features a little bit differently so that you can implement them in the way that we really design them to be implemented so that you can get the most out of
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we've had to come to realization is we're not the perfect fit for everybody,
them.
right? And that's okay. We're not going to be able to build the perfect software for every single coach in every single situation. But if you're working with general PopCap clients, trying to get them results, trying to connect with them, trying to actually deliver content to them and keep them accountable, like that's the type of coach that we want to attract and we want to work with. And so, yeah, I mean, there can be a trade off, but I think at the end of the day, the better solutions and the more problems again we can solve for coaches, the more their life is going to get easier.
Mm-hmm. And this is a constant dialogue with coaches, right?
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I'd love, think about it in problems. Like, hey, I have this problem with clients. That's actually a really good way for us to think about it because then we can even bring the problem to our tech team and talk about the problem rather than just talking about the feature, right?
Yes.
Because the feature is trying to solve something for you, but if you can articulate the thing that you want to solve, there may actually be a better way to do that, right? And we don't really know what you're trying to solve. We just like, hey, I want to swap exercises. Cool. Like it takes a lot more digging for us to figure out what's the real reason behind it. So, anything else that you want before we wrap this thing up?
No, I mean, I think we've done a bad job of talking about past features too.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've done a really, we release something and we're off to the next thing doing it, and we forget to talk about it with coaches. And so I think this is good because we can rehash and remember all the things we've released, and just to remind coaches. I mean, we had somebody this week who didn't know that you could do weekly averages with nutrition data,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's those little things that we just kind of see every day and we take for granted. But I think the more we can talk about them and remind coaches, hey, this is in there. You can do
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. The better it is.
Cool. Well, thanks, buddy. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah.
And everyone, we'll see you next week on Tuesday.
See
Take
ya.
it easy. See ya.